people aren't being deported. So not only is it's easy to get here illegally, it's easier than ever to stay here illegally. And that is likely that is going to continue under the Biden administration. We're going to get back into a discussion, depending on how this goes with the Congress in the midterms, about amnesty once again.
Yeah.
And you're going to have them saying, oh, there are 11.8 million people in the country illegally. They're going to tell you that even though we've had about 5 million enter the country illegally in the last 2 years. They're going to continue with it's about 11 million people, because the real number, if you speak to anybody in Border Patrol, anybody who's been working on this issue day in and day out for many years now, I mean, anywhere from 15 to 25 million tends to be the number that people who know the issue will tell you. And they're going to say, this is where we have to talk about comprehensive immigration reform, a pathway to citizenship. We think we've got electoral challenges right now. Just wait until the Democrats try to ram through, if they can, if they're in a position to, the biggest amnesty we've seen in this country since 1986. We often hear from Republicans far from the border, whether it's governors, senators, congressmen, congresswomen, that every state is a border state. Well, that's clearly true in a number of ways, given the wide open southern border we have under the Biden administration, the flooding of communities across the country with the lethal and highly illegal fentanyl that we've reached all-time high fentanyl drug overdoses as a result of this. I mean, Clay, here's a number that we certainly don't see reported a lot. About 5 million people. About 5 million people, according to an immigration watchdog, this was reported on just a couple of days ago, have entered the U.S. illegally. If you add in all the gotaways, this is under the Biden administration. If you add it all together, they say it's about 5 million. Now, we don't know what the official number is. It's more like 2 million a year have been entering. But you've definitely got millions of people who've entered the U.S. illegally under Biden. Millions and millions of them. That's for sure. The exact number nobody will ever really know. This is affecting wages. This affects public services. Clearly, it affects the ability of local services to function in places like New York and D.C. because they're complaining about it. And I think that's fascinating to watch. The CNN reporting on this over the weekend was that asylum seekers arriving in New York are now being transferred to homeless shelters, which is boxing out now people that are the homeless populations that already exist in these cities. Democrats have no interest in stopping this problem. In fact, I think you could argue very convincingly they want the illegality to continue, and this affects the porous border, and the dysfunction, the lawlessness affects wages, crime, sovereignty. The list just goes on and on and on. You don't hear Democrats talking about this at all because Biden is the worst president on the border we have ever seen. To be fair, far worse than Barack Obama actually was, his immediate Democrat predecessor.
Biden still hasn't been to the border. He's been to the Ukraine border, but he hasn't made it to our southern border. And Buck, you mentioned New York City and Eric Adams. The Muriel Bowser, the Democrat mayor of Washington, D.C., asked for the Biden administration to call out the National Guard so that they could handle this massive influx for them of migrants arriving in Washington, D.C. And the Biden administration refused to do that because they were worried about the political optics that might occur if the National Guard was called out to deal with this. This is, and I believe Doug Ducey now has also joined the governor of Arizona, has joined the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, in making this choice. Abbott is going to win comfortably in the state of Texas. And one reason is certainly the border issues register in a massive way there. Whoever gave him the advice to do this, because initially, I think, Buck, much like you, I thought, this feels a little bit like a stunt. There's no way it's actually going to have any kind of substantial impact. It didn't even take that many people getting on those buses and going to New York or Washington, D.C. to throw those cities asunder in terms of their ability to handle this influx, such that we're now talking about it, and there is coverage of the border issues in New York and in Washington, D.C., because they can't avoid it. They can't hide from it.
And what is the Democrat plan for this? Just so everyone knows, this is going to be very similar to what it was under the Obama administration, which did do some. There was a time when there was left-wing pushback on Obama for being the, quote, deporter-in-chief, because they did continue some level of interior enforcement. So we talk a lot about the border, but if you speak to anybody who has an understanding of what's going on with immigration and customs enforcement, people aren't being deported. So not only is it's easy to get here illegally, it's easier than ever to stay here illegally. And that is likely that is going to continue under the Biden administration. We're going to get back into a discussion, depending on how this goes with the Congress in the midterms, about amnesty once again.
Yeah.
And you're going to have them saying, oh, there are 11.8 million people in the country illegally. They're going to tell you that, even though we've had about 5 million enter the country illegally in the last 2 years. They're going to continue with it's about 11 million people, because the real number, if you speak to anybody in Border Patrol, anybody who's been working on this issue day in and day out for many years now, I mean, anywhere from 15 to 25 million tends to be the number that people who know the issue will tell you. And they're going to say, this is where we have to talk about comprehensive immigration reform, a pathway to citizenship. We think we've got electoral challenges right now. Just wait until the Democrats try to ram through, if they can, if they're in a position to, the biggest amnesty we've seen in this country since 1986, which was actually a Reagan amnesty, which he later regretted because they didn't keep up their end of the bargain with enforcement, which was no surprise.
Well, and this is what's going to win the election for Abbott. And I'm curious, with Kerry Lake in Arizona trying to succeed Doug Ducey out there, and also what is going to happen with Blake Masters, whether this is going to register with Mark Kelly. I'll say this, Buck. Mark Kelly is running for re-election in Arizona as a U.S. Senator. Have you ever heard Mark Kelly say or do anything?
Nothing.
He might be the most empty suit senator out there. I mean, just doing an interview, arguing in favor or against anything. It's amazing to me how many people go into politics and then try and just hide against the wall and hope no one notices them there. It feels as if that is his entire campaign strategy.
Are you enough of a nerd that are you familiar with Star Trek, the Borg? Are you familiar with the Borg? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know Star Trek. The Borg is taking it into the nerddom. No, I'm not. Is there somebody who does basically this?
So the Borg is they're cybernetic organisms. Getting a little nerdy here. That are linked
very nerdy.
in the hive mind. Okay, meaning so that they're all controlled sort of by one central. The Democrat Party is effectively the Borg. They just want people like the different functionaries within it, whether it's Biden at the very top or someone like Mark Kelly, as long as they have a D next to their name and they will do what the hive mind of the left demands. That's all. This is why I keep saying Biden, of course he's running for re-election, because they think that the Biden brand will get enough votes to win. And the fact that he's a buffoon who knows nothing, shakes the hand of empty air, and looks like he's in early stages of real dementia doesn't matter to them, because it's about the hive mind. It's not actually about individual leadership or thought. And so with someone like Senator Mark Kelly, all they care about is it a Democrat seat? If it's a Democrat seat, they get Democrat votes. The rest of it is unimportant to them.
Speaking of Biden and the empty handshakes, you know, it's been over 200 days now since Joe Biden has set for a one-on-one interview.
The one lesson we should have, Clay, is the hiding in the basement thing worked well enough that he's sitting in the Oval Office now. We can complain, and we have about the shenanigans and underhandedness and the malarkey and the cheating and all that, but he still ended up being the president after hiding in the basement. Democrats have a massive media apparatus that will carry their propaganda water for them, which means that they can. It's a great point you make about Mark Kelly. I've never even seen a soundbite of him in the last year.
All right. I mean, he is running for re-election. Like, you can agree or disagree with Warnock. He's out there talking a lot. I've seen him everywhere. There are a lot of senators who you can agree or disagree with who are very public in their beliefs. I haven't seen Mark Kelly doing anything. And so we got a big audience out there in Arizona. We appreciate all of you listening right now. I know a lot of you are deciding how exactly aggressive you're going to be during the campaign season. What has Mark Kelly actually done other than say, I'm an astronaut and sort of run his biographical arguments out there? So I think it's worth considering.